over the totem pole. I saw your legends lined up, and I never felt more natural. Apart, I just came apart. Please, 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 Sister Socrates, you always answer with a question. Show some kindness to a petty thief. Forgive, you did forgive. And watch the migrant smoke in the old orange grove, and the red rocket blaze over Cape Canaveral. You've been a father to me.
Welcome to After the Deluge. I'm Justin Cox. What follows is a lightly edited Zoom call with some of the Patreon supporters for the show. Since I stuck to the Bright Eyes records for the series, this is a chance to get into a bunch of the other Conor Oberst stuff and side projects and whatnot. I cut in a few songs, but mostly this one's just a raw Zoom hang. Thank you to Maddie, Michael, Rena, Greg, Justin, Per, and others for joining. I had a super cool time. I don't normally send people down to the show notes, but this one has a list of all of the records: Conor Oberst, Commander Venus, Norman Baylor, DEAPARACIDOS, Monsters of Folk, Better Oblivion Community Center, all of them, just to kind of orient you for this conversation. It's not necessary, but if that's the kind of thing you enjoy, it's all there and you should check it out. And with that, here is my conversation with some of the Patreon supporters of this show. Big thanks again to them for making this episode possible.
Traffic's kinda bad, the widening easy street, to fit more SUVs, to plant baby trees, to grow to shady peaks, a little shelter from the sun, or the upper tax bracket. Here on the cul-de-sacs, we're not giving back to the community. Repent, cause we can't afford.
You can feel free in this context to talk about whether you listen differently when it's not Bright Eyes, whether it makes no difference to you, but really just go at it from what you think records or songs you particularly like and why. Maybe you really can elaborate in any way you want to, pretend you're on a podcast or that you're on a Zoom call, whatever works for you.
I would say one at least mental distinction I make is the Conor Oberst and Mystic Valley bands are in my head like a very short leap from Bright Eyes, whereas DEAPARACIDOS, even Better Oblivion, are kind of their own thing. So when I was listening to the podcast, when you mentioned, there's 10 years between these two albums, like, there's no way. And I realized in my mind, I'm putting all those other Conor albums like in that continuum, even though they're a different
thing. He's extremely busy in that time. It's like, 10 years between albums kind of tells you, oh, wow, for such an expressive person to stop songwriting. Then you're like, no, he didn't stop songwriting at all. Like, wrote songs the whole time. What's really interesting, that like I'll give kind of an arc to this, but like I didn't connect hard with Monsters of Folk, and I think in a similar way to the way it speaks a lot to like the things that I didn't love about Casadega, I think, and I genuinely say these things as like a little bit Luddite self-criticism, is like they feel like the Monsters of Folk record feels this big washed in reverb sprawling open thing a lot of the time, and it's like I'm simple in a way that needs to just grab onto something simpler, and I don't know, and that feels common about those two, and I think that was like kind of this period where I drifted away a little, and then that kind of continued on to People's Key, and then it was around Payola, the DEAPARACIDOS Payola, and Ruminations that I like fully swung hard back. I'm not sure why that didn't continue on to Down in the Weeds immediately when it came out, but like Payola and Ruminations were like me coming back to something I drifted away from in a really, really big, really intense way.
I kind of feel like Ruminations is where he lost me a little bit. I did not love that album when it first came out. I still listen to it, and I prefer that to Salutations, like the more acoustic version. But that was one where I kind of feel the opposite from you. It's kind of lost me there.
Yeah, is the story with that it was like he was writing songs and the way he would write songs and then go record them, but instead just released the ones he recorded as demos, I think, kind of deal.
It was
it might be the outlier. I actually like Salutations better than Ruminations. I like both of them a lot, but Salutations is in my rotation heavily. I love it.
Yeah, I think I can totally understand both of those ways of seeing it, because I connected hard with Ruminations with myself and my headphones on and like just hearing this guy's voice and instruments, but it really has like a specific place to put on, it's not going on all the time, whereas Salutations I think can. And it's still those songs. I mean, that's kind of what I loved about Payola too, was like, okay, I'm getting this like punk album and I like a lot of punk music, but I get the guy who writes the Bright Eyes songs writing them and singing them. That's like gold. That's like that's a dream,
legit protest music in the modern age. I mean,
for real.
Rage Against the Machine broke up a long time ago. It's
what fucked me up?
Room for this kind of band.
You know what trips me out about both those things? Like, it's funny you bring up that point. Is like Rage Against the Machine, I would conflate with being overlapping with George W. Bush, but they're broken up before George W. Bush and 9/11, and those wars happen. And Payola, I would almost like, it's got all these immigrant songs and protest music. That's 2015. Like, maybe Donald Trump has come down the escalators to give his little speech, but he's definitely not president yet. And both of those things are before those presidential terms happen, which it doesn't mean anything really, but it like, maybe it tells you something about like, oh yeah, we pin down these moments of that seeming like they're really, really dysfunctional and maybe bordering on authoritarian or something like that, or whatever narrative, like that's way oversimplified. But like it's all oversimplifying. Like the world felt in a way for these people to come make this music at that time, like there are issues. Maybe they're even more nuanced and maybe even more problematic sometimes, Per, what's up?
And I think also thinking about the like political moment, comparing Read Music Speak Spanish and Payola, just seeing how things change, how like sort of the beyond like the war on terror, the enemy in Read Music Speak Spanish is like chain stores, being a sellout, conformity, malls, fashion, and like consumerism. It's kind of these like sort of vague concepts in a way, like Naomi Klein's no logo, like sort of just adding all these things together into sort of, and it's not like clear how they connect to each other, whereas on Payola it's so much more about like organizing, and like you see Occupy come and like sort of, okay, you can actually like get together and organize and do stuff. And the first song there, the left is right, and all these things about like how we treat migrants and so on. So like I think it's just sort of the left turning from something that just sort of complains about branding and chain stores to actually like organizing. I think we see some of that, and I think Payola is much more politically mature in that way in some ways. Then I think it's also like it mixes things a lot, like this sort of song about Anonymous, like as if they are some kind of like positive agent of change. But I think two things there that I think are really interesting with Payola. One is Underground Man. I think a lot of bands who were like really positive about Obama in 2008, who then became disappointed, they sort of backed away, like that meme with Homer backing into the hedge, sort of. Whereas Conor, I think he vocalized that disappointment in the song Underground Man, which is like really angry and really good. And I think that was unusual. I think that that was interesting. And then one of the absolute best songs on this album, I think, is Te Amo, Camilla Vallejo. So it's also so strange because it's just like this like hero worship of someone who I doubt would like that kind of hero worship. It's very far from like sort of the not me, us. It's like you're so amazing, and like singing that, they can never match your style, and you have the people in your palm and you're not afraid to die. Like it's like such a strange it had me that song. Sorry.
It had me Googling South American politicians.
It's also cool how these protests grew and so on. And now actually Camilla Vallejo is the spokesperson of the Chilean government at the moment. So I would really like to know if this like song had any kind of cultural significance down in Chile when these protests happened. And also that just sort of grew and grew until this protest movement sort of won the presidency just last year. So yeah, I think it's such a strange song, but also an amazing song.
It is a unique like song title. I love you, insert politician name. It just seems it's a funny thing. But that song, and I think around that time period, there was kind of like I had this period where I kind of like was listening to the music when I was younger that I liked. I probably said this on the podcast at some point, but like listening to the music when I was younger that I liked, and then listening to them progressively make worse albums as they got older and just not discovering new things and all of that. And there was some period where, I don't know if you know the writer, he used to write for Noisy and Vice. His name's Dan Ozzie. He wrote a book called Sellout. It was a really good book about like the major label feeding frenzy.
I love that book. I absolutely love that book.
Really fun, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
I have the audiobook. I've listened to it twice. It's awesome.
Beautiful. Yeah. Same. It's like you have people choosing to sell out and their great success, and then absolute failures, and then complicated. It's just amazing. But he was writing, like in his early internet writing days, he started writing about, I just kind of like saw some article, I think about the band Against Me, who I love, and then just kind of kept reading the guy. And I was like, dude, this guy seems like he's writing art. He's writing for me or something like that. And so then it was kind of a vehicle into finding new music. And I barely knew DEAPARACIDOS in Read Music, Speak Spanish time period. Like so then I get this, and it was around the time like I liked this band, the Menzingers and Joyce Manor and a few others. And they were kind of like melodic rock punk with a little bit of folk, a little like, I don't know. And this just landed right in that. The thing that like, just to like kind of round out a conversation about DEAPARACIDOS before going back to more solo stuff, like their story's kind of sad. Like the story, it's, I think I read that it's like they have a big tour for Payola and he gets sick and they have to cancel the tour. That's kind of talked about a lot on that last episode. And so that doesn't happen. And then in the 2002, when the Read Music Speak Spanish one came out, it was right around the time of Lifted. And it's like, I think maybe at the time, the sense is, yeah, like Fevers and Mirrors and Lifted and Bright Eyes is like ascending to some degree, but I don't think it was like understood that it was to the degree that it was. And the success of Lifted and Bright Eyes just basically snuffed out. Like it just would be really hard to sit there and keep making DEAPARACIDOS records when you have this other thing happening. And it just kind of like didn't happen, just was done. It's kind of
to add to that a little bit, Conor would say that part of the challenge that they had after that first record is that the war on terror started, 9/11 started. It was like this super patriotic time. And all of a sudden they're screamy little political band. They couldn't get any momentum. No one wanted to hear that at the time because everyone was too traumatized, I guess. That's the way he would put it. So there was really no momentum there. And obviously a lot of momentum behind Bright Eyes. So I was like, okay, well, just carry on with that.
I'm going to go sing.
They never really picked up.
I'm going to go sing about my broken heart some more.
Yes. Yeah. If I could just, I come from a heavy background. Metals were my first love when I was super young, but I got into punk pretty hard. At the Drive-In was a life-changing band for me.
Hell yeah.
That's kind of how I got into this whole indie, emo, post-hardcore stuff, how I got to Fugazi. And I was into DEAPARACIDOS early on when that first came out. But I didn't listen to them that much after that. So when Payola came out, it was really exciting because I thought like, oh, wow, I'm not getting a whole lot of this kind of record these days that I really connect with. So I was really excited about it. I was so floored. Maricopa. I don't know if that's the way. To me, that is absolutely one of the best protest songs ever, and very specific to our time. And it's a protest song that benefits from that screamy hard style. You couldn't do that on an acoustic guitar. It does not work. I want the fuzz. I want the crunch. I want the shouting. I need to feel that chorus. And man, he makes you feel it. And I love that it's told from the perspective of the people he's complaining about. So clever, so spot on. That song just floored me. I was like, oh man, he just wrote an all-time classic. It's amazing.
Same. Yeah, Maricopa, the county sheriff Joe Arpaio is there, and then Maricopa with the KKK in the middle of it. That's protest music turned up to the max.
He's got a few. I mean, Roosevelt Room, I think, is one of the all-time best protest songs, right up there, and I can't get enough of it. So he can DEAPARACIDOS and his solo stuff. He knocks him out of the park.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's true. Like, he picks. You're right that like. The war on terror happens and it's like uncouth at that moment, the way for like maybe tasteful ways for like a few months, but then in problematic ways for years to where they were trying to make it wrong to criticize what the government was doing. But I don't know, just a weird project. And maybe that one comes back again, but I don't know. It's one thing for three guys and two of them who've been close since to come together and do something, but for a punk band that's had like fits and starts like that, I don't know. Maddie, you're not into Ruminations so much. Do you have a solo record you do like the most?
I
or
really,
side project?
yeah, where'd it go? I loved Upside Down Mountain. Every Desert Island Questionnaire sticks out. I really, really like that one. I felt a lot of I feel like time is always like one of the metaphors he uses, right? Like, time forgot, and there are hundreds of ways to get through the day, right? There's a lot of like pieces that resonate with me, especially in sort of like the time metaphor zone. Yeah.
Totally. I really loved Upside Down Mountain too. That was one that I came to like. I was a friend of mine started like a radio show, and I went on his thing, and he had the record in there, which surprised me because I was kind of like away from Bright Eyes a little bit for that moment, and was like, wow, you got like new Conor Oberst record. And I think they say like this comes on the heels of the like sexual assault stuff. It's like also another set of weird timing. And so, but I went and checked it out because of that. I think Spotify was new, so I probably went and streamed it or whatever, and fell in love with Time Forgot, obviously, like getting out what you're saying. And then Enola Gay and Double Life, that run of two songs. I really loved those two songs. Per, you had.
I was just going to say how great Time Forgot is, but I think you covered that. But I think it's just I love like the big, like overproduced drum sounds, and like there's the classic like Conor themes about like traveling and escaping and like cleansing yourself, and the part where he sings about how he wants to walk in the howling wind until it scatters all my thoughts. I think that's combined with that sort of big epic drum sound. I think that's so.
And he's got a great history of pairing with different singers and backup singers, but I think the first aid kit on Upside Down Mountain is the best it gets. Like when they kick in, I can't remember the name of the first or the second song, maybe it's Hundreds of Ways. It is, it's like butter, right? It's one of the best.
Yeah, they're like a crazy set of harmonizing voices.
Yeah. You Are Your Mother's Child. I think you wrote it for a movie that was unused, but that song, and I have a few friends that, got divorced and have kids, and that said the first time they heard it, it's like getting punched right in the stomach. It's just amazing.
That's exactly how I felt when I heard it. To me, that song felt like it was written by my dad, who was a musician. It seems like it was written by my dad directly to me. Every line, if it was from him, it'd be exactly true. Every single line. And the video makes it so clear, powerful. To me, that's one of Conor's most touching songs.
I absolutely love that song. I remember you at one point on one of the episodes, Justin, saying like, I don't know if he plans to have kids. I hope he does, because I think he'd be great. It's like some kind of sentiment that's like, I think I do too, but whatever, that's like for fun. But that there are these songs, you're right, like it's come up in like kind of references to like Catcher in the Rye and Holden Caulfield. There's going to be like a little thing in the zine about that, like this like ability to describe childhood innocence and stuff like that in a way that doesn't have to come from a parent or whatever. But there's some real beauty to it. I had no idea about a soundtrack that it didn't get used on or anything like that. Do you know any more about that?
That's all I remember about it. It was like a Friends movie, and yeah, I'm pretty sure I got it from Wikipedia, so we can check it.
I think it's really funny how, like, I'm not gonna lie, I've used Wikipedia so much for this podcast series, and it's really funny how like 10, 15 years ago, our parents were talking to us about how like you could just put anything on Wikipedia, like blah blah blah. You're gonna believe so and so, and it's like kind of like more trustworthy than almost all the other like websites updated by people and social media and like Facebook feeds that our families are reading and stuff. It's very interesting.
It got me through business school.
If I remember correctly, the Wikipedia picture for Conor was the first show I saw him at was the barn show in Makokata, Iowa. He had super long hair, it was just like overalls, and it was like a 200-person event. So I don't know who took that picture and like put it on Wikipedia. It was
But
super small.
you were among them at the time?
Yeah. I was like second row. The only person in front of me was in a wheelchair. So I was like, I was first row.
That's funny. And that was Tim solo?
No. Well, he had the Fleece Brothers backing him. I think he was doing solo stuff, but Bright Eyes songs made it on that.
Yeah.
Playlist,
Yeah, you talked about First Aid Kit. The Fleece Brothers were a band I somehow didn't know until like 2 or 3 years ago, and super good. Like super good in a way that like maybe was the kind of music that I listened to for a certain period, and then kind of like I think maybe the world kind of like overdid that kind of music, like threw too much of it at us or whatever, but then finding them, it was like very, very fresh and I don't remember, cool band.
Mm-hmm. I liked them.
Yeah, they were his backing band for 2 or 3 or maybe even more tours. I saw it multiple times, and they're one of his strongest. Besides Bright Eyes, I think this is the strongest backing band.
Like iteration.
Yeah.
Right on. Michael, is it Michael? Do you want to tell us your favorite solo version of Conor Oberst? If you're
I think I am now. I think I was really excited when on the record store day when the Ruminations expanded edition came out. I don't know when it was now. It seems like it was yesterday, but it's probably a couple of years ago or last year maybe. Because I love the original Ruminations, but then I was super excited to hear the original versions to the extent that that's how you could characterize them, of those extra, I don't know how many, 4 or 5 songs that were on the expanded edition. I think, so I really loved Ruminations. I like Salutations too, but for some reason my preference is Ruminations. And when I got to hear kind of in the inverted way, kind of the scaled back versions of those songs that I heard in the full band version first, that was just really neat. I think I'm trying to think of what were among the songs that weren't on the original. I think like Empty Hotel by the Sea was one of them.
And that was maybe an expanded version of Ruminations.
Yeah. So Ruminations.
You know what? I went in and saved that as I led up to this Down in the Weeds Where the World Once Was, and I think I like just confused myself, like, why is this a different color? And did not even realize that's what that was.
Yeah, the gold cover, that's the one that was issued later. So those songs may have been accessible prior to the release of the LP, but I hadn't heard them, and it was just neat for me to kind of see it done in reverse, whereas I was used to the Ruminations original versions before the Salutations album came out, and then it was kind of done in the opposite way. But that's just I love that the Ruminations album, and I saw him in the same barn in Iowa, but it sounds like it was after, I can't even remember what year it was. Me and my probably 7-year-old daughter at the time saw, and he played many songs from Ruminations slash Salutations, and it was just it was remarkable.
I gotta say, I go years at a time without talking about Iowa, probably between elections, and now we have 2 people who've seen at the same barn in Iowa, and the last guest on the show was coming to me from Iowa.
Yeah, I saw him in 2015. It would have been the summer of 2015. He might have played there twice, because I don't remember a ton of Ruminations. I don't think that one was out yet.
It must have been 2019. Yeah, they were all clad in their overalls, and it was they were leaning into it pretty heavy.
That's fun.
My favorite part of the Ruminations tour, there was a guy with a fishbowl next to him that he would take all the harmonicas and wash them off in his fishbowl and hand them back.
Oh my God.
Thought, like, what a job that is.
That's incredible. Nice. Greg, do you have a favorite non-Bright Eyes version of Conor Oberst?
I would say I think Salutations. I think it's a real tight album, and there's some nostalgia in there. Completely coincidental to my fandom of Conor Oberst. I lived around the corner from St. Diphnah's for about 6 years, so like that was my local bar. So then the song comes out, I'm like, holy shit!
Oh, that's
and then
awesome.
the video, I'm like, oh my god! I spent years. It was after he moved out, so I've never run into him there, but yeah, it was pretty. And the Lime Tree Deli was around the corner as well,
Wow.
so it was like weird. Yeah, so that one kind of hit me right in the
That's
nostalgia
amazing.
feels.
What's that place like? That song is stunning. That song is amazing to me.
It is it's moved now. It's like 2 blocks away and it's different, but it was like a skinny Irish pub that would kind of dogleg in the back. So there was a table there that you couldn't see from the street. So if you locked that down early, you could spend the whole night in the table with your buddies. And then there used to be a backyard behind that. So, the whole part about being out back with your friends and like that is very real, but you got to start drinking early to get that spot. So, and I think also, there was on I'm Wide Awake, It's Morning. There's a bunch of lines that are very clearly related to that bar. So you could like pick it up a little bit.
That's cool. That's really awesome. I'll cop to like not having heard except maybe some loose songs from Water, Here's to Special Treatment, and Soundtrack to My Movie, early ones. Danny, you know of those or have heard them?
Yeah, they're all on they're all on Live Music Archive.
Okay.
The person who had them up on YouTube, she had her canceled. She had her channel canceled, and reached out to the sub and was like, "What am I gonna do? It's, this stuff should be out there." And I encouraged her to throw them up on there, so they're all there. And I encourage folks to listen. I mean, it is pretty interesting to see. I mean, it's very crude, and he's very young, and he's squeaky, but it's kind of interesting how intense his guitar playing is sometimes while he's singing like that. I mean, he was obviously pretty damn talented at a young age.
For sure. Is that
they're not great, but it's very interesting.
I know I would, for someone playing that young and making fully formed music at such a young age, I'd love to trace the line from childhood to doing that, because it's crazy. It's usually the people making the real like garbage at 16, not like having made the garbage for 5 years before that to then get there. But so is like that Space Invaders, is it like in that vein, and is that song on them? Is it like that's what this is?
Yeah, Space Invaders is on one of those. It's the same. I think that's the same release that has Lava Monster, which is another famous one from his early days. I often say that 50 years from now, when they make the Conor Oberst movie, the final shot will be him at 13 recording Lava Monster in his room. There won't be a dry eye in the house. I'm telling you, it is that endearing to hear that song, because it's pretty fully formed for that period and very intense, and it's listenable. It really is listenable. So it's very endearing. I encourage folks to check that out.
It's so cool. I mean, and you're talking about the guitar playing and stuff like that. Like on the Space Invaders one, it's like, okay, this is crazy. Like, this is clearly a child and this is good. But then it goes from being the thing that's good to like spastically strummed shrieking. So he's already like, that's unconventional and wild already, like, and are you doing, when you hear it, you're like, oh, this crazy little kid. But I think he already has some sense of like, you're talking, he has I think there's like, you can't overstate Mogus and Tim Kasher and all these guys being 6 years older. He's hearing Fugazi and all this shit already. Like, and so I think he's just observant and whatever natural thing he has going enough to be like, I'm going to take this thing that sounds pretty and say, scream, the planet is safe for now, while I go fucking wild on my guitar. It's crazy. It's unbelievable, really.
I also really recommend the song You Should Be in Sweden from that era to like, that's a banger.
I think that's the best one off that album.
Yeah, we agree on that. But yeah, I really like it.
It's like the reason I've said it a bunch of times, but the reason that like, okay, you make a Bright Eyes podcast and that's all Bright Eyes, but not all this other stuff is like, let's really think about it. Like just okay, he makes Water. Here's the Special Treatment. These are like through the early 90s. And then you get, you start getting like the collection of songs and Letting Off the Happiness. One of the members who's eventually in Bright Eyes is on one of those and producing it. Then by the time, like this period, there's a period where it's Bright Eyes, but might as well be him solo still. But then by the time,
it takes the early Bright Eyes stuff at the same time he was in Commander Venus. At that time, Bright Eyes was the side bedroom deal.
Yeah.
While Commander Venus was the vehicle. Yeah.
It's not until the two albums in one day that Walcott and Mogis and him become Bright Eyes. So it's like, and like I saw it the way I spoke about it on the shows. It's like, okay, this is Bright Eyes, but like, is Letting Off the Happiness even? Isn't it just a more sophisticated, more grown version of these ones we're talking about in the 90s? Like in reality,
I'm pretty sure Mike Mogis was involved pretty heavily with Letting Off the Happiness. I could be wrong about that.
He was,
but I think by then he kind of saw Mike Mogis as being part of Bright Eyes. So it's a little bit different than those early ones. I don't think Mike was that involved.
Yeah, I think he helped I think he either helped very minimally or heard the collection of songs and then was like, okay, you should get some help.
I mean, I don't know how they got that sound on Pull My Hair, but that's clearly a Mike Mogis magic right there.
All gone, or is it still newlywed? If all this heat's doing is making us stick to the bed, then there's no.
Does anyone really love the Commander Venus stuff? I'm curious. Does anyone really love it on this call?
Not my favorite. I think it's the one that like there was a lot of talk early in the series about like emo and like what emo is and everything like that, and you kind of listen to Commander Venus and you could be like, well, this is like kind of like in places really squarely landing in what people were calling like some rough edged emo at that time, like that wasn't my bag. I mean,
yeah, I got that album back when you paid for music, I think by the song or whatever. I was deeply disappointed. I think I listened to it once and I'm like, that's enough.
I find it endearing. And I'm a huge Cursive nut, so it's always great to hear Tim on there too. I will say that I assumed a lot of you weren't that into it. There's a great live clip of Commander Venus from 1995. If you guys want to see young Conor freaking out on stage with Tim there, and the song quality is not that bad. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but it is the earliest historic document I've seen that's really good quality like that. If you want to see, like, Conor still wearing the glasses on stage, but he thrashes his guitar, almost knocks Tim out. He's screaming into the mic with the glasses, and he looks like a little kid. And he's already full rock star. It's an amazing. It's not the best song, but to me, it is kind of a highlight of his whole career. I've seen that performance. It's important.
If you send me the link, Justin, I'll put it in the description for this one when I
can put it in the chat right now if you guys want to check that out. Because the other early ones that I have from Bright Eyes, he's usually sitting down, and like when he's 18, he's sitting down and playing the acoustic. So he still looks really young, but it doesn't quite capture that young wildness. It's not young like this.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. So I thought you guys might dig that.
I think, Justin, you asked in the beginning like how we see that Conor solo differs from Bright Eyes, and I also think it's interesting to think like how he thinks it differs, because I think I saw him live in 2008, and for the first time it was just like Conor Oberst on the bill rather than Bright Eyes. I think he had toured before that as Conor Oberst of Bright Eyes, but not as just Conor Oberst, and he played like no Bright Eyes songs, which I think heavily disappointed 90% in the audience. He also, and you so like he was drawing that clear line. I think that was probably important at that time. He also did not play any songs from the Conor Oberst album he had previously released. He played songs from the upcoming album, which made the audience even more frustrated because it was not Bright Eyes. It was not even.
These are the kind of things that would also make me frustrated in that moment, but that I respect at my core that he's doing. You know?
Yeah. Now, like 15 years later, that's hilarious and power to him. But at that point, it wasn't that. But one song that I would like to talk about that I just love. He played Breezy, and that was the first time I heard it, which is just so beautiful. I think it's kind of similar to Ladder's song in a way because it's about someone he knew who has died, and it's so. Just as you talked about in the People's Key episode, like sort of it sounds like it like fails to play the chords properly, and I think Breezy has some of that those qualities too. So I think that's one of his absolute best like solo songs. And I heard it live then, and then it came out on an EP, and then years later it was released on the One of Mankind album. But it was released, I think, first on an EP from 2009. Which, yeah, it's just an amazing song, like sort of a sister song to Ladder's song in many ways, according to me.
Really cool. So what do you have? You have Casadega in 2007, I think, and then you get Conor Oberst self-titled. That to me feels like, besides DEAPARACIDOS, Read Music, Speak Spanish, which they're kind of like have a following, and that kind of feels like the first time you have this, you've made this career, right? You've made I'm Wide Awake It's Morning, you've made all this stuff, you've had this like mainstream success, and then you're choosing to make a record under the name Conor Oberst. Like, do we know what, like, I have my own feelings about it, that it's like some curiosity or a desire to express in different ways and different avenues, or maybe even sometimes reacting to popularity in a way that's deliberately doing something else. But like, I don't know, any sense of why he does that? Why this doesn't just keep being Bright Eyes moving on? Like, I don't want to just like conjecture or anything like that, but because it's recurring and like it also leads up to the current moment. Like, is the next thing that happens another Bright Eyes record, or is the next thing that happens not? You know, he's not just going to stop writing songs. We do have data for that. He's not.
I can speculate. I can give you a couple anecdotes that might explain it. They had a train wreck. Bright Eyes had a train wreck overseas show, and everyone was just all disappointed. And he was sitting next to Cyndi Lauper. And I think her quote to him was something like, "Conor, getting old sucks." And I think he told that story in the interview to kind of explain this, like, hey, I'm just gonna hang out with my wife and my friends in Mexico for 9 months. And if we make some music, great. If we don't, we don't. And that's what that first solo record feels like to me. It feels like a healing record in a way that's a little bit different than some of the other healing stuff on earlier Bright Eyes stuff. It just feels like he just wanted to be.
You can make a thing like that without the pressure that comes with it being Bright Eyes. You just literally not going to even slap a title on it. This is Conor Oberst.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
He doesn't have to get on stage and feel like he's got to deliver the best show of his life every night. Yeah, I think that's what he was kind of getting at.
And is it also what the audience expects, even though I think there's a lot of like growth and like I think Bright Eyes matured a lot. I think you are still at the Bright Eyes show going to have a lot of fans showing up wanting to see an emo person screaming their, whining about their broken heart. So I think just like sort of to show that this is not what we're doing now. This is not what we're about anymore. I think that probably, like, I think it would probably have been, this is pure speculation, but like probably pretty difficult to grow as Bright Eyes at that time point when people were expecting a certain things, just a chance to do something else. And I think, the songs on the first solo album is a bit less emo, lots of emotion still, but it's not like him being over the top sad, which I think they stopped doing, but still think Casadega has a little of that in some songs at least. And I love Casadega, but like I think they really sort of not have to do that and not have anyone having those expectations. I think that was because I think it's a bit more like somber. I think it has some amazing songs like Cape Canaveral, Sausalito, Landers in the Temple. Moab, NYC Gone Gone, and Milk Thistle. I think like great songs and very emotional, but not like him. And maybe a little less personal. Like at least like I think you talked about this in the last episode. You really think like for some reason we always think it's like this is Conor singing, but I think like the first album, even if it's the first in his name, it's like feels a little more distance. It's not like you don't necessarily think the narrator of each song is him. That might just be me, but I think a chance.
I think I feel that in whatever way. Like I can't exactly explain it, but it feels like I think the result is that like I like this. Now, obviously, like Cape Canaveral, and like I like the records, but I kind of don't in the same way that it feels the way you're describing it, Per. That also is why I don't love it, or it's not really inviting you to have super strong feelings. I don't think the way I think Ruminations might, like we have people here who like talk about it as their favorite or least favorite. I think it is inviting that feeling, whereas that one seemed like they were setting out to make a thing, right?
Yeah, I think it's the same band on both, but only Outer South has the name on the cover. I think largely the personnel is the same, and it's more, at least it seemed to me, much more deliberate of we're a band and we're making this record versus this came out of a trip, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to see what comes next, because I don't remember where I read it, but it was saying that they had two albums on the deal that they're making now, but that seemed like maybe these like reinterpretations of old songs might satisfy that, which would seem like a very Bright Eyes thing, like all right, we got a 2-album deal, we're going to make our Bright Eyes thing, and then deciding midway through it that like, let's just reimagine some old songs and then do some weird thing next. Who knows?
Just one more thing about the first solo album, something I thought so much about when it came out, like how we talked a little about this the last episode I was on, the sort of the checklist of like first you record like a folk album in New York City, then you make like a political album, then you become spiritual, like sort of this, how to be Bob Dylan, like the checklist. And I think on around the first solo album, he even started like dressing like Bob Dylan with a hat and stuff. Like maybe that's like classical country folkish look, but still, and also sort of singing like him a little in the song Get Well Cards. Listen to that, and I think like the parsing of words and stuff is very Bob Dylan. It's like, wow, he really like full Dylan here, which I found very entertaining.
And ended up sounding like Tom Petty in the process.
But the stuff, in Get Well Cards about the postman asleep in the sand, that's just like so Dylan. It's like, okay, Conor, you're taking a little too far here. But I enjoy that now. But I was like, whoa, okay, one step too far.
Kind of cynically, I mean, one of the Pitchfork people I talked to, which they got that gene in their body, like just sort of like, oh yeah, and then he went and just tried to pretend to be Bob Dylan for a while, like, which my thing I think is sure to a point, but I think it's like we were talking about with Commander Venus and like whatever emo music was. Like, I think a lot of like he's a person with an imperfect voice and a insane command of words and melody. He's like about as qualified as you get to do it, and he doesn't, but you're right. There are these moments where you're like, okay, that's pretty Bob Dylan-y, like what you're doing here. But
the funny nuance about that is that Bob Dylan tried to be other people. I mean, he literally tried to remake himself as Woody Guthrie when he first came out, recreate himself as a country crooner in '69. I mean, he is that chameleon. He is always trying to be someone else in a sense. So hating on Conor for trying to be like Bob Dylan is pretty funny to me. But yeah I get it.
it's leaning into phases and stuff like that. Did you see that that guy who was on Saturday Night Live who was like he was like just a YouTube guy who had like a Trump impression who did like generations of Bob Dylan impressions like a couple months back? And it really was kind of wild because you're like, he's doing like Everybody Must Get Stoned, and then he's like in Lay Lady Lay, and you're like, wait, somehow Bob Dylan made like 4 different voices be iconic, but also different Bob Dylans. It's like,
sure, yeah, we could maybe start it off with like that folky Greenwich Village Bob Dylan. Here, let me get this harmonica here. This will be helpful. Okay. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride He's always giggling on these songs. What fun it is to ride. I think Calvin Coolidge said that. It's like some professionalism, please, Bob.
But then he did. How about the crooner when he did the crooner kind of?
The Lay Lady Lay.
Oh, yeah, the
Nashville Skyline. Bob Dylan. He had a completely different voice all of a sudden.
Yes, he had.
It's like, jingle bells, I jingle all the way. How fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Why are you singing like that? We don't even need you to sing. You're Bob Dylan.
You have your own voice, but he created a new voice. But then he did the whole rock band tour, the Rolling Thunder.
And he's like touring all over the world. He's filling arenas. He's got the Rolling Thunder Review Band. That's my favorite Dylan because he's unintelligible. He's just screaming. Yeah, here we go. Oh, we're dashing through the snow. Moving over those open sleigh.
You're in 2019, and then we get this announcement that he's making that Better Oblivion Community Center is coming. What did you think, expect, and then feel about that record?
It actually took me a while to unpack because usually his solo stuff I can get into pretty quickly, and I like Phoebe Bridgers, right? But it took me a while to get into. But once I did, like Dylan Thomas and Sleepwalking are genius tunes. But it was a slow burn for me. I liked Phoebe Bridgers. I love him. Together, at first, I was like, but it finally clicked.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what I came away when I was honest with myself, because I was excited for it. I think what I came away was man, I really, really love half these songs, and then just the other half just kind of wash through in the back, and that's fine.
My favorite thing they put out is actually the single, Little Trouble, which sounds like it's the last thing. It sounds like a little bit to me like it's kind of recapping their relationship. And I love the fun of it. I love how fuzzy it sounds. I like it. It kind of sounds a little overblown and a little punkish, but it's a pretty upbeat, friendly tune. I love that one. I think that's one of his best. And I find their dynamic to be pretty charming when they're together. I didn't know who she was when that record came out, and I was grateful that obviously she's got a great backlog, and I got to dive into those. The other thing that I love by them was their live performance on, what is that? KEXP?
EXP.
They do lots of live. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
They do Easy Lucky Free with Phoebe singing and Conor on the Conor doing. I'm a guitar guy. I'm obsessed with the guitar tone and guitar playing that Conor's doing on that fuzzy, broken electric guitar. It is magic.
Did it all get real? I guess it's real enough. Got refrigerators full of blood, another century spent pointing guns, anything that moves. Sometimes I worry that.
Thank you for listening. In the second half of this conversation, we talk about some more Phoebe Bridgers, Boygenius versus Monsters of Folk, Conor's voice, bitterness on Ruminations, dying slowly, dying quickly, the Salutations album cover, Conor's karaoke vibes, whether any of us have caught a train wreck show, and the Love is Real Facebook group and Discord. You can find that live on Patreon right now. I post all the episodes there before I put them here on the main feed, but I'm going to keep that one only on the Patreon, so that second half is just going to live there. Go to patreon.com/afterthedeluge. Thank you for listening.
But don't you weep for them. Don't you weep. Don't you weep. There's nothing as lucky. Don't you weep. Don't you weep for them. Don't you weep. Don't you weep. There's nothing as lucky as easy.
like, it's funny because that's one of my favorite Bright Eyes songs. And at first I'm like, man, it's just not enough there. It's not dense enough. But once I kind of tuned out the drumming and the lack of the lush instrumentation and just focus on their dynamic, I thought it was stunning. So, and I love that Phoebe screams her head off a little bit at the end, and that's great. And she looks like she's having a great job doing it. But it's that guitar playing. I don't know how he got that sound. He needs to make albums with that sound. It's amazing to me. Love it.
I can't wait to check that out.
I just put it in the chat. I've never seen it before, but that's what I'm doing after this is done.
Oh yeah. It's fantastic.
I'm up in Pacific Northwest. I listen to KXP a lot.
I really, really liked the Better Oblivion Community album. I'm not a big fan of Phoebe though, but I think all of her works on this album. I don't love a ton of her solo stuff. It seems shallow to me, some of her stuff, but I think in here, together there's a depth to the songs. I love Big Black Heart. It's like one of my favorites. I love this album too.
Yeah, I had a feeling the other day. My situation was like I went to a show, she was opening, didn't know who she was, and then saw her just by herself, and it was very transfixing, like in that kind of like caught off guard kind of way. Just so that stayed with me. But like we talk about like the Monsters of Folk record, like Jim James and My Morning Jacket were big deal then. Like they have like a legendary Bonnaroo set and like a couple records. It was like they were a big deal. And then M. Ward in his own way, and then like I was kind of that was a big deal, that record, I think. But like Phoebe Bridgers and then two other really good musicians, Lucy Dacus and Julian Baker, but by no means nearly as popular as she is. They're the cover of Rolling Stone right now as we talk right now, like in like a huge iconic Rolling Stone thing and a spread and a giant tour that's like getting sold out, pre-sale, everything like that. That they have an EP that's good. It's Boygenius, they're called, and but like I would think that Monsters of Folk is just as big as that, but I'm wrong about that. I don't know. And we've talked about this. We're talking about Conor Oberst as a solo musician, and I've like spent too much time talking about like Spotify metrics on this show, but like the top songs on his are all Better Oblivion Community Center songs.
Yeah.
What is Conor Oberst and Bright Eyes for young people? Like he might be people who just literally have no idea who he was without any of that stuff. So
I think he's the guy that wrote the song that Lisa Loeb sang on Fuller House. I think that's who he is to the Zoomers.
Hell yeah.
Which is like really sad.
You got to choose how you feel about these kinds of things, but the way in which what songs are popular is a lot of times determined by that and social media apps and things like that, just how it is.
At least it's a really good song, so he's got that going for him.
I mean, you could be getting turned on to good music, or you could be getting turned on to bad music. It's better for it to be good music.
I think it's fair to say that Conor's voice is always going to be a divisive thing. I think someone like Phoebe has a more broadly appealing voice, so I think that helps explain it. I know lots of Phoebe fans that think Conor's terrible singer. They hate when they work together, which I find amazing because I think Conor's actually an amazing singer. But I get it. I mean, it doesn't match what a lot of other people look to for singing.
Good in whatever, in the way that you decide good is good. It's not in that. I mean, it could be just growing up on punk music or something where it's like gauging whether I like music or not based on a voice sounding perfect. Like it's not like it's like, are you listening to like these songs on Letting Out the Happiness and Fevers and Mirrors? He's not trying to sound perfect. Doesn't give a shit. That's kind of the point. Like that's not what this is. And I sincerely believe that if you discover your perfect pristine voice at the age of 13, you probably spend a little more time just like working on refining that voice, which is now your tool. Whereas if that is not the primarily, like, you're not trying to become sophisticated and perfect on that, then you're probably spending a lot of time writing the actual songs and the words and the melodies and everything, because you're not Whitney Houston or something. You can't just like, not that I don't mean that as a diss at all. That's a compliment to Whitney Houston, but like it's like it just sound like shit, but like
with a voice like his, you need to have good lyrics, right? You can't skate on that. So it's I think it's symbiotic.
It's another back to Bob Dylan thing or Neil Young thing or something, right? Like you got to be bringing something specific, but
like the Tom Waits, right?
Yeah. Well, as we will this, I'll keep this open as long as we want, but as we kind of like start to round our corner to winding down, I want people to be able to say anything that they wanted to talk about on this.
I want to hear more from iPod Mike. Where you at, Mike?
I'm here. It was funny. I don't know if you somebody mentioned Little Trouble a couple minutes ago, and it was funny because that came up on shuffle on my phone today, coincidentally, and I'd almost forgotten the song. Like who is singing in this song? And it, I mean, I really like it. Obviously, I eventually remembered, but I think that his voice in Better Oblivion. I think someone was saying Phoebe's kind of traditional, the beauty in her voice kind of brings his along in a way. It's on that album, he seems to be singing in a more sort of refined fashion than he otherwise does, which, you know, it's an interesting way to hear him, and hear him in a lot of ways kind of play background to her. And I think they're really good complimenting each other in that respect. I'm kind of disappointed. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a Better Oblivion Community Center album number 2. I'd be intrigued by what that would sound like.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of, like, on that record, they have their kind of like trading off things, but then they have their moments where they're just mirroring each other on Dylan Thomas, and it's amazing how it works. Like just a shared song between these two very different voices
I love that. I love that song. And the way you described is perfect.
Yeah.
Not to keep bringing up Bob Dylan, but it reminds me a little bit of when Bob and Joan Baez would sing together. The way that their voices are so different, but somehow lock in this weird way.
I mean, I think that was happening on the some of those songs that Emmylou Harris sang on. She's just kind of mirroring and following. She's a little bit more retreated to the background in harmony, but it's there. It's like it's more upfront than your typical harmony would be.
Yeah, and when you were talking about, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying a ton of his early stuff with Maria Taylor, he does the same thing. Like they just mirror each other, like February 15th and a number of others.
Totally. Yeah, you're right. That's been happening since the start. Yeah, actually, there's like some of those really early songs doing that. Some of the best. I love Waxahachie, and I've talked about her often, and she's on one of the companion ones that came out, and it's replacing one of those old ones, and it's just one of those scenarios where I'm like, I just don't need another version of this. But the thing is, it's probably exposing it to some other people, and that's a great thing, and they will love that version and not be able to listen to the old one or whatever. But like, it's too, I think it's contrast and compare, and it's just too in my bones to like move on from it, you know. Michael, you were going to say something, and then to pair after that.
When you were talking on the Wide Awake podcast about Emmylou being kind of layering her vocals in the background after the fact, and I think you express this too in the podcast. It's just magical the way that she was able to appear seemingly out of nowhere on a couple of the songs. And I mean, I've never been a huge Emmylou Harris fan, but it was pretty remarkable.
Yeah. I think it also benefits from no one tried to make that fit perfectly. It doesn't even fit perfectly. It's part of its charm is it's like, it's just loosely hanging on with everything. And that allows it not only the beauty in her voice, but some other kind of character, some other kind of like, all of this is like creating mood. And that one, that's a really good addition to that record that is like pretty buttoned up, you know. Fair.
Yeah, I would like to pose a question. It seems like many of you have listened a lot to Ruminations and Salutations, and I haven't been listening to that much. I would like to mention the song Next of Kin, that I think it's amazing that no one has mentioned so far. But like, to me, it feels like the tone of his lyrics changes a lot for that album. Like, he feels very bitter and like almost petty in a way. Like, he allows himself to express bitterness of being disappointed with friends and so on, for sort of not having his back during the troubles he's gone through. Maybe that's just in a song or two, or maybe that's more. But I think like sort of before that all these like big melodramatic feelings of sadness and so on, but not so much like allowing himself to hold grudges and stuff. Like, would you? For you who have listened more, like, would you agree? Is there a change of tone, and does he allow for other emotions and character traits to come out?
I'll just say my little part first, and anyone else feel free to add after. But like, to me, it feels extra personal, and then that's added by the fact that there's nothing in the way of it. It's just him. You can almost just like see him, and then he's on the cover with that, like whatever psychology that plays of him sitting at that piano, and like kind of a shitty cover, really, if I'm honest. Like, I don't understand that cover, except for the fact that it's exactly depicting what the record is, so therefore it's then perfect. It's, I mean, I think it does have its like sweet or loose moments, but is mostly pretty brutal.
Yeah, look at Counting Sheep. Counting Sheep is one of the darkest songs he's ever written. And pay attention to the lyric about hoping that the kid who was killed on his way to school, he hopes it was slow, he hopes it was painful. Now that would be a very like cringe edgy line by any other artist, but knowing Conor and his affection for young kids and all the songs about that, to me, it was just acknowledging, like, he just is so beside himself in this moment. He can't believe he can't believe he's actually feeling that way about that, and it spills into all the other aspects of every other thing that's going on in his life. And that song is just absolutely devastating.
He changes the line in Salutations, though, saying, "I hope it was quick. I hope it was painless." Thank God.
Yes,
right?
Thank God. Speaking of album covers, it's going to sound morbid. Please don't judge me. When I first saw the album cover for Salutations, it looked like he was lying dead, floating in the pool. Anyone else? Okay. I'm not the only one who thought that was the imagery he was going for.
It's almost actively swimming.
Well, yeah, and I think on the inside, it's a direct reference to he's laying next to the pool. You gave him mouth to mouth beside, or whatever the lyric is, beside your mother's pool. I think that picture actually depicts him in that position. So yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate take on what that is depicting.
And if that was the intent, I think that there's he's going for humor with that one. I mean, it's pretty silly to put that out there. I think he was talking about when he was writing Ruminations, like even his manager was like super worried about him. And I think he's just kind of like, hey, I made Ruminations, I didn't die, and now I'm making this more celebratory version of that record. And here I am dead on the cover. Like, haha. It feels a little like inside joke, but it feels intentionally humorous to me. I could be wrong, but that's how I'd see it.
I don't own it, but I I mean, I think I'm looking at it right now. That's like, you don't have to go far to make that interpretation of what that is. But that record they're also weirdly is like I can't see it right now, but like I'm pretty sure the inside and the back and everything, it's almost like colorful balloons and stuff like that, like the track names and things like that. There's like a contrast to it that feels colorful in some way that.
Like,
it's very weird.
Fits right. Oh, go ahead.
No, so the Mike Birbiglia Old Man in the Pool on Broadway has essentially the same exact album cover, which I'm walking into the city. It's just very odd that a comedy album and Conor Oberst Drowning are the same. Sorry, Justin.
And to me, it was his way of like tearing down his own ego to like really kind of make fun of himself in that photo. And it reminds me of a photo shoot he did for an interview around that time where he said, "Oh, we're gonna go outside and I'm gonna do the Anthony Kiedis thing. I'm gonna take my shirt off and be the sex symbol." Like it was obviously hilarious to him, and he took a photo shoot with his shirt off. It's like I think he's like just poking fun at himself. It felt like that was his way of kind of coping a little bit. Just say, hey, it's not all that serious. I don't know.
I think you can't help but like take it to like the last tour and everything like that. It's like combinations of really kind of like scary stuff, and then combinations of like that looks like a guy who's drank a little too much, kind of bouncing around singing for fun karaoke borderline, like what I look like if I do that, you know?
I feel like dance and sing. He was like spinning around, getting caught up in the chord. Yeah, very karaoke vibes there. Yeah.
He was spinning around doing hand gesture moves. I mean, he was it was clearly a little bit of a humorous thing. I think he's just, I don't know. I think it's like this new ego death thing that he's on. Maybe I'm enjoying it. I'm liking this humorous side of him. I mean, I'm assuming that's what he's going for. It's making me laugh.
Yeah, and maybe just some nights you have a little too much fun, and it goes where it goes. I don't know.
Exactly. While we're speaking on it, was there any shows that any of you saw that were like could be called train wreck shows? I'm curious.
Not me.
I saw him not really, but he was really angry. They toured Europe and toured Sweden in 2002, right after Lifted was released, and they played a Gothenburg the night before, and they were really like goofy on stage, like playing around, and then his promoter told him that like you tone it down, like you have to be serious when you perform. And then he said like apparently it's okay to write songs about being a drunken wreck, but not being one is not okay. So then he they went on stage in Stockholm. He didn't look at the audience once. He just like played through all the songs, smashed the guitar and drunk it in the end, and then like walked up and did no encores. So I it was amazing, just like everything you want Bright Eyes to be, but like he was really pissed the entire time, which was like and then he refused to play Sweden for a few years after that. But I guess some would call it a train wreck because he was angry and did no audience interaction. But like if you want like that, the tortured poet hero, that was perfect. So, but some might call it a train wreck, perhaps.
I saw 2 shows on Casadega tour. That's amazing, Per. I saw 2 on Casadega tour and then one solo one around Ruminations, and they were all, I feel like things were at their peak, immaculate string section type stuff at the times when I saw. So they were all like kind of like extra clean.
One show on the Down in the Weeds tour in Queens where it was very borderline. He barely made it through the show, which is a little sad, but he did open with a Christopher Cross song, a cover of Arthur's theme, which was oddly amazing. And he came out with a top hat and a tuxedo shirt. And it was like, he's wasted, and it's the first song. But it ended up being a pretty good show.
I found it funny when I talked to I didn't plug my computer in. Well, on the episode, the guest I interviewed on Lifted had just seen him in Florida, and she's like, "Yeah, I went down. I met with my sister, and we saw in Florida. Unfortunately, it was just a kind of good, clean show that sounded normal and not crazy. Like her thing was like, I wanted chaos. I don't know, like not in a way. She didn't say that. She didn't say anything like that. I felt would be like a problematic way of putting it, but like I kind of get it. Like I think the wheels. I don't know how many of you play live music in any form, but there's an excitement in like the foundation being slightly rickety, being great, but not all the way, like it being able to fall off is cool.
Can I have 3 pizza? I know it one.
Yeah, I'll be out in a minute. I'll be out in a few. Oh, yeah. That's Milo. Sorry.
Hi guys.
Aww.
Hello.
You want to talk some Conor Oberst with us?
Yeah. Hey, Milo. You guys can. I was listening to He Was Homesick when I was listening to Down in the Weeds a lot, getting ready, and he's like, I like this guy. This guy's good.
Good taste.
I was like, good job, dude.
Hey guys.
Hi, Rena. Tell us where you are.
I'm in Massachusetts. I admin Love Is Real. I just wanted to hop on and say hi. My son just fell asleep, so I'm sitting in the dark. I tried to put my camera on, but it was super dark.
Very cool. Thank you for admitting Love is Real. It's really amazing.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for the podcast, everything. People really enjoy them.
Good, I'm glad.
I am kind of embarrassed to say I have not got around to listening to them yet. I'm bad at listening to podcasts.
No embarrassment.
You know what I mean?
No embarrassment needed. That is a common thing. I think for me, it works for me because I don't have the attention span to do dishes without doing anything else. And so I apply it to my life and sort of bundling something that stimulates me to something that it sucks.
I mean, I'll keep trying.
No, don't. No, there's no. I didn't mean it that way. I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt anyone. So you go ahead. I just wanted to say hi.
Yeah, we kind of talked about. I don't know if there are any solo records or side project things you want to share, but we were talking about shows we've seen.
I just hopped on. You guys were talking about the Queen's show. I was at that show, and sorry, I don't know everyone's name, but whoever was just talking about it was he opened with Arthur's theme. He actually did not open with Arthur's theme. Miwi Lalupa did, and we have to give him credit for that. But it was cool, and he came out with the top hat and the cane after Arthur's theme, and it was a surprise because, like you said, he was wasted by the first song. Yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and say Conor wasn't drunk. He was drunk at every show I saw, but I saw the show the night before in Worcester, in Massachusetts, and he was wasted at that show. He was a mess. So when I saw the Queen's show, I thought, and I've seen Bright Eyes before, and I've seen Conor solo a whole bunch of times, and I thought the Queen show was really, really good. Then, when they came back around to Boston, that show was actually perfect, clean, went off without a hitch. They played all the songs I wanted to hear: To Death's Heart, Symmetries, The Lucky Free. Oh yeah, I mean, he was totally drunk in Queens, but it wasn't a Houston situation, and it was not a Worcester situation. I don't know. So.
I mean, if you saw, you have the benefit of of having been to several of those to compare the kind of thing, right. And then you see what you see, and an interesting thing, you talk about the Houston thing and all of that. I went on a trip with my wife to Ireland in summer, and we saw the band Hooray for the Riff Raff, which was the opening act on all of that kind of the most hectic legs of that tour. And we talked to the band members afterward and was just casually talking everything. And then it came up. I trying to make myself sound less like a douche. I mentioned that I was making the Bright Eyes podcast, and they talked about that tour, and they said only positive things about the people and the experience and and it wasn't in some real public thing. It seemed pretty genuine and real. So,
and I think that's probably part of choosing them to tour with Bright Eyes, because they were cool and everyone was friends, and they maybe didn't get too annoyed with whatever was going on, so that's nice to hear.
It's a mass grave, $1.50 resting place on the north. Faith, it's a rope I've gotta climb. I'm a stone's throw from everyone I love and know, but I can't show up looking like I do in an old suit. My hair is slicked back nice and
I also thought you saying that Salutations was or the Ruminations and Salutations tour was I don't remember what word you used, but in his prime or something. The Salutation show was out of this world with the Felice brothers. It was amazing. Yeah. But for me, and the entire show is on YouTube, House of Blues Boston. I can't remember the year, 2013, I think. This is a true solo show, and Conor played for almost 2 hours straight. I highly recommend watching the video. It's professionally recorded. It's all on YouTube, and I think that was the prime Conor in his prime. the hat, like
got some live shows to brush up on. Justin, were you gonna say something?
I missed out on the Conor with the Fleece Brothers tour. That sounds like, based on everyone else's comments, that was a pretty great tour. If anyone has any great shows that are on YouTube from that tour, please post it in the chat. I'd like to catch up on that era. I don't think I've seen anything from that.
I wish there was a professionally recorded like entire show from the Salutations tour, but I don't think there is. I just want to like reiterate again, because it's the most or like best recorded show is the House of Blues.
That's nice when
if you want to watch Conor like being Conor and not someone like with a shaky camera and like bad audio and stuff. Like it's just, I've watched it so many times and I was there, so it's like I get to relive it.
Yeah,
really
cool.
fucking cool.
A great era that the Wide Awake It's Morning tour in Town Hall in New York City. I think he did 8 days in a row with different bands coming in and out. And I think that's when Coco Rosie opened, which is kind of an interesting pairing. I never even heard of them. And they're playing with like a kazoo and like a kid's toy piano.
Yeah,
they're wild.
Running chains along pipes and stuff.
Yeah, they were tight as, because there was a week straight in the same place, right? So it's just one of the tightest I've ever seen him. And then with the Fleece Brothers were also tight as hell. That was maybe 10 years later. It was great.
I did meet James Felice after the show. That was cool. I asked him if I could meet Conor, and he was like, he's really drunk in the tour bus, and he's going to be mad if I pick him up to meet a fan. And I was like, well, at least I got to meet you. But at the time, I didn't know the individual names of the Felice brothers. So I was just like, you're one of the Felice brothers. And I don't know if he liked that, but
I'm sure he loved at least I got to meet you.
He was just walking down the street. I think he was happy that someone recognized him. But oops.
That's awesome. And for anyone who didn't know, Love is Real, you might all already know this, but Facebook group and a Discord where community of people. I thank you all for letting me post each episode of the podcast in the group.
I mean, thank you for sharing it with us. Like it's a great thing for us to have in our group. I love it. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, cool. I've got kids who are asking to have ice cream served to them, and it's better if I don't let them do that themselves. Thank you all for listening to it and for kind words you've said, and a lot of this stuff has like helped me with actually making it, and I was excited and a little nervous to do this, and thank you all for coming on and being great.
Yeah, thanks. Let me know if you ever want to figure out like a Zoom or something. If we ever want to do something, we can do that. Love is Real has a Zoom account. Also, if anyone's not in Love is Real, you guys should join. We do listening parties every Saturday. We listen to Bright Eyes together a lot. We also have open mics twice a month. So it's just, the events are fun. That's all. I'm not going to keep selling the group.
Love it.
Come on over if you're not already there. And thanks for having us.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice Wednesday night.
Thank you so much, Justin. Nice to meet everyone.
Is it Thursday day for you, Per?
It's 2:30 a.m.
Oh, damn. Okay. Night. Thanks for joining. All right.
Nice to meet you, everyone. Take care.
Nice to meet you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.